when we do our meetups, we share everything. We don't charge for it. We just invite people out. It was killing me that people were losing money investing in real estate in Austin, Texas. It was just killing me. So we just share. And when you do that, you find other good people.
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Andrew, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. I just wanted to start off with, the big sort of anchor thing here is that you've raised $6 million on a project. Congratulations about that. That's quite a feat. I know you've been in real estate for a bit, and we'll talk about that, how you got here, a little bit about your career, et cetera, as we sort of peel back the onion and hear more about your story, learn more about you, your ambitions, experience, and all of the goodness that you have to share. But talk to me about this $6 million you raised. Talk to me about the project. How did the project come about? The challenges, the good things, the unexpected things. I want to hear about this.
Yeah, so you don't, I don't think you wake up, first of all, thank you. You don't wake up and say, hey, I'm going to go get $6 million, and you go out and you just get it. That doesn't just happen. If someone had told me when we started in our real estate careers, and when I say we, the collective we is my wife and I. She's not only my chief wife officer, but also my chief technology officer, because I have trouble with my phone, and she has a technology background. So it's a collaborative effort. When we started into real estate, if someone had told us anything more than, hey, you're going to fix and flip a house, keep some for rentals, that's what we thought we were doing. And, it's fun to look back and say, how did you go from point A to point B? Mm-hmm. And it's literally just becoming comfortable with it. Our backgrounds, both my wife and I were in the corporate world. We worked, we did what our parents told us. We went to school, got our degrees, got our advanced degrees, went to work, got good jobs, did well in them. And then we both had a similar experience in that I did so well in my job that my company decided to sell off our part of the company. Thanks, Andrew. Good job. My wife had a very different experience. I think she's more qualified than I am in the technology space, especially. She's what is referred to as a bio. She interfaces between the business and the technology guys. And during a reorg, she got forgotten about. They literally forgot her. So she waited and went to HR, and they said, "Oh, your boss will get in touch." Long story short, it kind of opened our eyes and said, you know what, maybe you don't need to work for someone else. Maybe this is a sign to go do something else. And so we got into investing. And again, did the same thing, got educated, learned from experts on how to do it. The going from flipping a house to a $6 million raise is just a matter of, you flip a house, then you see you can flip a larger house. Then you see all the problems with that and think, well, I could build a new house and not have to deal with someone else's problems. Sure. Then you can build a larger house. All of a sudden, you're building a $1.2 million house on 6th Street in Austin.
Wow.
Then you start thinking, well, but we wanted rentals. We could do a rental. Okay, or we could do an apartment building and get 100 doors right away, or we do an RV park and get 81 doors right away. Mm-hmm. The good news is over time, by doing it repeatedly, and then, people see that you're doing it the right way and doing the right thing and having success, all of a sudden banks want to lend to you, investors want to lend to you. And 6 million would have seemed insane when we first started this. And now it's, our next project is 19 million, and it's just a matter of scale.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And, the step-by-step of, there's always a bigger fish. There's always a bigger thing to do. And, the getting comfortable with it comes through the education of doing it, the practice of doing it, talking to people, being a part of a network, like you said, learning from experts. The $6 million, dollar raise. I mean, we can sort of back into some of those other things too. I just wanted to make sure, we commend you and congratulate you on that for your chief wife officer, your CWO, and your CTO. I love that acronym. That's a good one. Now, was that $6 million raise? Was that for that RV park?
That was specifically for the RV park.
Okay.
We we fortunately had good enough relationships with banks, and our business plan was strong enough
Hmm.
that the banks were willing to lend on it. But they do want you to have skin in the game. They want you to, at that point, they wanted 25% equity. Um, what we had done, I guess this was, um, I this is my first of all, this is my first time on a podcast. So thank you for, I'm no longer a podcast virgin. Thank you for that. Our way of doing it is we did meetups. We did local meetups here in town where we'd invite people out to properties, and they'd see it before we started, then they'd see it during, then they'd see it at the end. And by doing that every month, month after month for a course of years, again, people saw us having the success.
Hmm.
Um, for the RV park, we needed to raise about 400,000 to purchase the property. We reached out to 5 investors. They all lent us. They all said yes, and we're off and running from there.
Outstanding. Yeah, it's interesting how networking in circles go. How we both found out that we were the part of that group too, but I'd never heard of you before because you were there much before me on this. But as it goes, you're in Austin, I'm in Austin. Um, uh, you talked about the scale, right? The ladder of first thinking from corporate to rentals, and then building that house, and then building quote unquote more doors. I hear a typical path, and sort of myself included, of going from single family to something like multifamily. Talking about more doors, it makes a lot of sense to do more doors from apartments, but not an RV park. What was the decision making from going to an RV park from single family?
Great question. I love answering it because it probably helps to understand a little about me.
Hmm.
So um, I grew up playing soccer. Okay, I know this sounds way off base, but I promise I'll get there quickly.
No, no, it's good. Tell us
Um,
about you.
I'm I in general, till I had to have both my hips replaced. I'm generally the fastest person out there. And as a kid playing soccer, you would think the fastest person, you're going to be up front trying to score goals, chasing everything down. That would be your job as the fastest person out there.
Hmm.
Not so much for me. My mindset, I'm a risk manager at heart. It's what I am. Um, so I'd be out there, they'd be trying to push me forward, and I'd be looking behind me watching our defense. So it never worked for me until I switched and switched into a role that made sense for me, which was on defense. Similarly, in the investing world, that hasn't changed. Who I am has not changed fundamentally, which is I've always found that fascinating. That you can't change a tiger's stripes, right? That kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, I'm still a risk manager, and people say, "But you invest in real estate. That's inherently risky, isn't it?" Not if you do it right.
Right.
You get educated. The question you asked was about multifamilies, like apartments, versus an RV park.
Yep.
I look at RV parks as less risky. Number one, the capital expenditure is less. You're buying land and you're building a glorified parking lot is what you're building. You're building a parking lot with utilities and some amenities. That also means your capital expenditure is less because you're not building vertically.
Hmm.
So I'll give an example of what a conversation I just had with our bank, one of our banks that we work with. They had a project that started the same time as our RV park, which was right as COVID was getting ready to hit. Okay,
An
no one
apartment
saw that coming. Hmm?
apartment project.
Someone was starting an apartment project, and no one saw COVID coming. There was no way to predict for that. Um, the difference is our project, we went over budget on ours. I'm not even embarrassed to say that because you hear on the news that the inflation rate in this country during COVID was 6.5%. Well, not on building products. On most of our building products, it was touching 30% inflation. Well, you can't plan for that in with a loan. That's why banks got hurt. You just can't really plan for that. The difference is we went over budget, but our business plan was so strong and our exposure was less because we weren't building vertical that even though we went over budget by close to $1 million, our investors actually did better. They're actually doing better because of COVID. And it's funny, I made a note to myself, I have to be careful how I say this. No one wants a recession. No one wants the economy to do bad. No one wants anyone to get hurt. No one wants COVID to continue. No one wants any of those things. But our investment actually got better during those. The flip side of that is a lot of multifamily, a lot of apartments that were being built that started the same time as us. They got eaten alive by construction costs. And the bank told us about one. He said they're 2 to 3 million in the hole with there's no hope of catching up. Their business plan doesn't account for it. So it'll just become an empty job site for years until the value of the land comes up and someone else can come in and do something with it. Um, the risk manager in me caused me to do that. I didn't see COVID coming. It just luck, skill. I don't know.
Great. I love that comparison, and thanks for answering the question that way too. But the sort of uh, carrot you're dangling for me to pull on here is, to make it painfully obvious and just laid out. I know that you love to teach, and the education component here too. So I appreciate you being here for this exact point. Is how did it do better?
Yep.
Specifically, it makes sense. You're talking about where multifamily and or apartments, right, are vertical, like you said, and you mean that by literally, is that one, two, three, four type of stories, or do you
Literally
mean
building up and needing the materials to do so. Yeah.
right, right, and the design that goes into that versus something that's almost effectively 2D, maybe 3D if you have some stuff to put in the ground,
Right.
right? But talk me through, how did it do better?
Yeah. So yeah, it's funny. This is why my wife and I usually do this together because she would nudge me for being too negative. All you said, Andrew, was that you went over budget by close to 1 million. Um, Initially, when we started, this was going to be let's say a $5 million project where in 6 years the value of the investment would be close to 8 million. Instead, it became a $6 million project, and the latest projections with actuals built in because we're open and we have stuff coming in
Hmm.
puts the park at worth close to 12 million in now 5 years.
Okay.
And what drove that are a couple things. One, when COVID hit, um, it the RV park industry was already booming. RV sales were already booming. There was already a movement to smaller homes. Tiny homes were nothing new. So there was already a movement in that direction. But COVID hit, and all of a sudden everybody's like, wait, I can work from home. And the
Hmm.
technology exists to allow me to work from home. Then it became not only can I work from home, I can work from anywhere. Well,
Hmm.
RVs are the only thing that let you do that. If you want to work at a beach this week, if you want to work in Galveston for a couple weeks, if you want to head up into the mountains and head towards Colorado, that's what allows you to do it. So all of a sudden, occupancy rates and rental rates
Got
actually
it.
went up for RV parks during what was basically a recessionary period. We even saw apartments, the rates coming down as recession kicked in. We were
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to compare it to, people, the old example is when times are good, people drink. When times are bad, people drink. Alcohol's safe to be in.
Sure. Sure.
When times are good, luxury buyers buy nice RVs and travel in them. When
Yeah.
times are bad, it actually becomes your most affordable housing out there.
Right.
And so it kind of fits in the same realm,
Yeah. Yeah. Except one is a little bit better for your health, maybe.
just a little.
But we're not doctors here, so
No.
uh, anyway, yeah, thank you for spelling that out. I'm gonna come off. I think really great for my audience here from the perspective that I'm very ignorant about RVs. I know how to spell it. I've been in one before, but many of us tech professionals, in the bubble in my head about many of the people I'm thinking of right now, maybe haven't been in RVs before. And
Mm.
so, if you could just talk to me like I'm five, or like 100 level here for just a minute or two. You sort of touched on it, but the RV park, right? Recreation vehicle. This is that 2D, effectively a parking lot, some infrastructure that's there. You roll up, you plug in, you pay your dues, you're there for X amount of time, you pay your temporary rent, and then you go. Is that about it?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So, and first of all, talking to the audience who's never been in or traveled in an RV, we started this investment before I had ever traveled in an RV. So
Awesome.
it was completely research analytical based because that's my background, and it just made too much sense. And at some point I said, you know what, if I'm going to own a baseball team, I should probably know, how many outs are in an inning or how many innings are in a game, right?
Yeah.
So, we rented an RV and drove it from Texas to San Diego, and it was good. It was interesting, and we learned a ton. And here are the things we learned. One, just like if you're in a neighborhood in here in Austin, you talk to your neighbors, you got a lot of different people. You got a lot of different ages, different backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds. You got it all over the place. You come to the holiday season, you can tell who there's people celebrating different holidays. It's all over. Yeah. So RVs are the same. Most RVs, most RV users over the past decade, over 50% were baby boomers. Okay. You had people who were aging out and just getting to a fixed income, and it was a nice lifestyle for them. Now it's changed a little. You've got millennials who really don't want or see the need for the huge house that their parents or their parents' parents coming out of recession era or depression era and World War II were like, get the biggest house you can and then be poor. You know, I think you and I had chatted about the rich dad, poor dad analogy, that the biggest house you can and then don't be able to afford to go anywhere and work your tail off every day, don't invest, and hope you die before you run out of money. Um, that's not the millennials. People make fun of millennials a lot, but they're pretty sharp. They've got some things spot on. Living in a smaller home, in a smaller footprint, that's more environmentally conscious, that's less drag on their finances so they can do the things they want to do. Some people say that's greedy. I think that's fantastic. You're only on this earth for a certain period of time. You might as well not spend it trapped in your home. So it's one type of person. Again, you've got seniors that are living there because it's a lifestyle. Now you've got millennials living there because it's a lifestyle, and it's really funny to go into parks and see it's it's a big split, and everybody gets along, and it's kind of funny. There's also different types of park. There's destination parks, so think the RV park in the Florida on the coast somewhere. There's RV parks in national forests. You go to Yosemite, stay in an RV park, and you go hiking all day. It's fantastic. Um, the park we have, yes, we're the first one we opened. It's a couple miles from Lake Travis, which is great, but it's also 19 miles from Apple. It's 19 miles from Dell. It's right off of you're close to easy access to I-35, 183. I don't know if everybody's local and understands what I'm talking about, but it's basically easy access to get if you need to be at the airport, if you need to go to a meeting. If But in the short run, as long as you have high speed Wi-Fi going throughout your park,
Yep.
anybody will stay there. Then you've got a split. You've got some people who are there in and out. They're called in and out parks, where they go in for a weekend and leave.
Got
We
it.
have a bunch of people coming in April because we have an eclipse going through Austin. Um,
Mm,
so we have a bunch of people coming in for a week to celebrate that. But we also have a large group of people who are living there full time. They
yeah.
are living there, and it's a lifestyle thing. And you'll see their slip empty for a week every once in a while. It's because they went and drove somewhere, and then they come back.
I gotta admit that that sounds like a lot of fun. Um, I'm like, dude, I need to. I love the be a I like your baseball analogy, baseball team analogy of if you're going to own the team, but driving your quote unquote driving and learning your asset class, be a user. Where real estate is so understandable in a lot of ways because we all live in some housing, hopefully,
Right.
and so to that end, it's like, I've been talking about this trip with one of my brothers to go from like, Boston area down to like Florida. That could be the thing.
Do it. You need to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And take the scenic route. Don't just head down I-95. Head through the mountains in the Carolinas. Do some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that'd be a good, maybe 7, 8, 9 day thing to go and do, make some memories along the way. But I think, you know, what you said about the millennials, the like lifestyle, as well as just continuing to look forward. As we talk about different, we're talking asset classes, but we're talking about social implications too. right? And
Mhm.
the generational aspect. Really just cool. It covers the different cycles of generations. And like you were talking about with baby boomers and those coming back and wanting, to have the millennial generation and what they've learned from their parents and things that, you can quote like hard times create, for easy, easy times create weak people, that whole
Right.
type of thing. But anyway, the point I'm making is really as we continue to look forward, I mean, even Gen Z is an example, more experience based and want a smaller footprint and want to go do things. And so this is conducive to that too. So as we think about trends, you continue to see this asset class um, being something that's great to invest in and people continue to use because of how people are behaving. Is that true?
It's incredibly true. And if you talk to your marketing folks, they'll tell you Gen Z and the millennials are the two target groups right now because the senior group is all the older generation's already there. The baby boomers are already there. There's growth there, but it's limited. But in the younger generations, it's definitely there. And again, it was they were already kind of there, and then it was a mindset and a social change that occurred during COVID. That oh, we're okay to do the things we want to do now. That's fantastic. And you just mentioned experiences. One of it's such a simple thing to do. We've got a big open air pavilion at the park northwest of Austin. And how hard is it in Austin to find someone to go out there and play an acoustic guitar on a Friday and Saturday night? We've got fire pits out there, put out all the fixings for s'mores, and just create an environment for people to gather and be social. And again, got the high speed internet through the park, so people can do whatever they want. It's figuring out what people want. That's never changed. It's never changed.
It sounds amazingly cheesy on paper of, you create community and this and that, but I think there's something super cool when you actually, you read it on paper and you go and see and to have the fire pits and have the pavilion and stuff like that to be there. And that itself is such an amazing value add too. And I think it's super cool. So you talked about, longer term type of what do we call them? Residents, tenants. What is the correct terminology?
We got to be careful there. Now we get into the details of investing. We actually part of our loan structure. We have an SBA loan, Small Business Association loan, and the Small Business Association doesn't want long-term residents.
Hmm.
So our contracts are month to month, but they're longer term. There are people who are going to be there 6 months, a year. We have people that have been there since we opened the park, and we don't see any sign that they're going anywhere.
Got it. I wasn't actually aware of that, but that's really interesting. It's SBA loan, and that's for looking at it as a business versus as an investment vehicle like real estate, right? Um, Wow. Okay. Uh, let If we have time, I want to pull on that thread later. But just looking at the model, so we have a mixture of we'll just call it for the sake of conversation, longer term residents, destination parks, and then in and out parks, um, based on the type of customer mix that you have. What is your build criteria? What is the risk manager and you like to see there for you?
So I'm an unusual risk manager. My last, I guess, corporate job was I was brought in as the guy. Look, as a risk manager, I can stop all your losses, but I'm also going to kill all your business. You're not going to bring anything in, but I'll stop all your losses. Congratulations on that. I'm more how do we do this in a smart way? So if the monthly rental rate is say $800 a month, or you can bring in $60 a day from a daily rate. It's much more lucrative to bring in the daily, but there's a trade-off. You have some vacancies. You don't build the community as much. There's more overhead because you're having to manage that. We're targeting right now about a 50-50 split. And the nice thing is when you build in the right area, again, real estate has never changed, location, location, location. If you build it in the right place, if you build it on a busy corridor, if you build it close to something people want to be near, if it's close to where people need to go, we'll actually have the ability to kind of uh, tug on those strings and say, all right, we want to flex this direction. We want to flex this direction. And we expect to be in that position in the next 6 months of being able to decide who do we want there? What do we want it to look like? Do we want it more lucrative, but a little bit risky? Or I could have, in that location, I could have 100% long term.
That's super interesting. It's cool, right? Because in my mind, you might have an A, B, or C multifamily, right? But even let's say you're the developer slash builder, you've built it. You know, you're at the lease up phase, which is get everyone in there. And arguably, if you have a B class type of property, you want B class tenants to support your, that to
Right.
support your local market. But since you're selling, call it what it is, time on parking spaces to make it super dumbed
Time
down,
on par. I like
um,
that.
then you can pull the strings of your own customer mix and market it how you want it, especially if you're like, oh, well, we have this eclipse thing, we can market that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about not the right fit customer for the apartment class that you originally intended.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So RV parks, and first of all, I already jotted down, you just created an acronym, TOPS, time on parking spaces. I love that. I'm going to find a way to use that. That's going to be in a spreadsheet at some point. So
I love
thank you for that. This whole hour was worth it for that. Uh, no, so we don't use A, B, and C class for RV parks, but they probably should.
it. Right.
There are luxury RV resorts. They have stone, like custom walls built around them, gated entries, people pulling in rigs that, I mean, the motor coaches that are up near $1 million pulling in there on a piece of land. Those exist,
Yeah.
and it's one class. Then you've got parks that are basically dirt with utilities sticking out of the ground. They have them in Midland, Odessa, in the oil fields. They call them man camps, is what they're
Got it.
called. We thought one of them had a chain link fence around it, and then we realized they never put the fence. They just put the poles so someone couldn't drive through. They're just bare bones. And even where we built, our job, we were trying to be just a little nicer than everyone else, but not over the top.
Yeah.
And we found it allows us to charge a little more. We got a complaint, for example, or the only complaint we've had so far, a real complaint. A gentleman complained because we do background checks.
Okay. Sorry,
All
we're
right.
making it a safer place for you.
Yeah, I was like, you know what, sir? I believe you're a good person, but I don't know everybody, and I've got a 4-year-old, and I need him to be able to run around in the park and be safe.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work for you, I'm sure there's a better park for you.
Sure.
So there are different classes in RV parks, and when you do that trip from Boston down to Florida, because I'm going to push you on that, you'll probably see some of it. On our trip to San Diego, we stayed in a park that was all truckers. It was all people heading out west, driving past the big Amazon factories, but just picking stuff up and moving it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different classes that there are.
Got you. Got you. Now, yeah, great additional context. I was just thinking like your ability to quote unquote pull the different strings to get different, make it favorable environment for different types of customers, literally at will with some lag time to implement and change your strategy and pivot is actually quite cool. So, sort of pivoting from here, I like the perspective, you bring in the risk management aspect, you gave some background about yourself as well here. But I have to ask the questions, right? We've been comparing from single family to RV and why not multifamily, but it sounds like why not isn't this might be ignorance on my side too. It definitely is, but why not mobile home parks? How does that compare here in your mind?
Yeah, no, great question. So we should probably talk about that. There's modular, which is anything that's built in a factory. That could be an RV, a mobile home, a tiny home, anything that's not stick built on a site is considered modular. I will tell you there is a stigma about modular. There's a lot of small towns that you can't do modular. Okay, but I'm going to put in a $500,000 modular home that's better built and nicer than anything else in your little town. and you're saying I can't do it. People hear modular or mobile and they think rundown mobile home parks. So it's kind of a stigma attached to it. Um, right or wrong, if you go into a nice mobile home, once the door closes and you shut your eyes, you don't know. You walk around, once you open your eyes, you don't know you're not in a nice home. They can be done up really nicely. They don't hold their value. And then versus an RV, they tend to get run down. And then versus an RV, which is built to be driven on the road, they don't have the mobility. And part, again, this is me as a risk manager saying there's additional utility to being able to move it. It's not something that's just, I mean, you can move a mobile home, but it's work. Yeah, RV is much simpler. We just saw it as being much more flexible, and I like the flexible from a risk management standpoint. You know, another example of that is out at the park. We've got, and then the one we're building, we've got right now we've got 73 RVs, and then we had 8 more spots, and we decided to put tiny homes on them and Airbnb them. Well, they're the same hookups. And all of a sudden, as COVID hit and then the market started changing, we're like, all right, let's invest in 8 cabins, put them there. And what's interesting is those cabins rented out faster than the RV slots because people wanted them. And it gives you the flexibility to do that. Um, Once you've built a mobile home park, converting it down to an RV park, it's not as simple. And again, just the drivability gives you more flexibility. That's why we preferred it. It felt like the direction we were going.
Cool. I that makes perfect sense. I just had to ask the question because you know, especially from, like I said, similar to the background. Like I've never done the RV trip, and you know, I appreciate the push there. We'll talk about that too. I get some tips, but directionally, it was, you know, just comparing at a 10,000 foot view the different asset classes makes a lot of sense about the RV side. So let's talk a little bit more before we pivot here, a little bit more about, you know, the asset class. So the value, we've been talking value, and that makes a lot of sense. The type of, you know, customers that are there, how you think about two different sort of, you know, metrics amongst many more, I'm sure, of the daily rate versus a monthly rate. You know, financing looks like SBA. We don't have to stay on this one, but are there other types of financing that usually is in used as well? Is it real estate financing, or is it traditionally just SBA?
Yeah, no. So SBA is a good option. SBA will not lend on construction in 99% of the cases. They'll do it in some unusual cases for manufacturing, but SBA loans to businesses. So the bank has something worked out with the SBA called a 504B program where the bank will lend the money on the construction.
Hmm.
And then after construction is done, it's called a debenture. They'll take 1/3 of the bank's loan and SBA takes over 1/3 of the loan. So
Nice.
the bank has just lost 1/3 of its risk, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, the SBA goes into second position.
Hmm.
And on top of that, the rates are about as low as you can get.
Super cool.
So that's why we did that. I will say it was incredibly difficult to get working with our government. Sorry for everybody out there that's listening that works for our government. You guys are difficult to work with. Um, Getting the SBA loan was, I'd rather go to the dentist. But long term, the payoff is there.
There we
The
go. We
payoff.
got it done, and we're serving the community. Uh, cool. The financing. So so all the infrastructure, the hookups, goes in place. We start, you know, the marketing T minus, you know, number of days before build is complete, so that we can start getting, you know, accepting customers, so to speak,
Right.
and then the operations sort of happen. So, you know, since we're now talking tops, we're now talking. Um, had to throw in there and make it official.
Right.
Time on parking spaces. Um, what do the operations look like?
Yeah. So operations, I kind of glossed over this. Going from the corporate world to the entrepreneurial investor world, one of the biggest challenges is I'm used to having an accounting department. I'm used to having an HR department, a legal department. I'm used to having that technology department, which again, fortunately, that's why I married my wife. Um, she's going to hear that, and I'll get smacked for that. But No, I'm used to having those things in place. And one of the things you need to do as an entrepreneur is think, what's my time best spent doing? And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, my job as in a developer role is finding the deal and finding the money for it. That's my job.
Hmm.
Running an RV park is not the best use of my time. I can make more per hour finding better deals.
Hmm.
So we outsourced it. We found a national property management company, and all they do is RV parks, and they are running the show. And I just had my check-in call with them yesterday.
Nice.
We go over what's important, and they ask me questions, and I answer them, and they run it, and I pay them a fee for that, and it is worth it.
Perfect. Got it. I mean, absolutely. Completely agree. And so, again, just at a high level, I only ask that question. I love the investor frame because highest and best used for ourselves too as entrepreneurs. But the perspective is, like places have to be maintained. Like the parking spaces, the pavilions, so the cleaning, general cleaning, maintenance, security, that kind of stuff. Make sure the tech is there, like whoever's taking care of the wireless, as an example. All the basics, pretty much, right?
Yeah. So again, I've outsourced most of it, and then there's some additional benefits to RV parks. One that I didn't bring up when we were talking about why RVs versus mobile homes or apartments. Tax benefits. The improvement on the land is pretty minor for an RV park versus other things. I don't have buildings. I don't have things attached to the ground. So the taxes are lower and insurance is lower. So those are benefits. There's another big benefit of an RV park. If you see a rundown RV park, it's because someone's not trying, doesn't know, or isn't trying to keep it nice. What we have in place is, I live in a decent neighborhood with a homeowners association, and I may think those people are crazy and have too much time on their hands, but you know what? They keep the neighborhood looking nice, and that's fine. You can set up the same thing with an RV park. When someone checks in, they sign, and here's a piece of paper. Here are the rules. Um, and if someone doesn't follow the rules, we're friendly about it. And if they don't follow the rules again, we're a little less friendly. And when I say we, it's property manager, not me. Um, After that, you don't have to go through an eviction process. It's a vehicle. You can tow it.
Nice. Got it.
And everybody in an RV park knows that. And by knowing that, it kind of pushes good behavior once they see. So we've gotten a lot of compliments on the park we just opened, how neat it stays, how clean it is, how safe it is. And I'm kind of chuckling about it with my wife because like we really didn't do anything. We just said here are the rules and just show people they have to follow them. So I always found that very interesting.
Yeah, I love it. And I know I was poking a little more on that one, but the reason why I was just because knowing that you're taking care of things at the owner level is important. But just like you would have, understanding your asset class, like there's evictions, it's a similar process. So I don't want to spend more time on that. I do want to, you know, make sure we have time to talk about, things like some of the different trends that you're seeing as well. I think some of the frequently asked questions that you have are, things like, are these planning to stay around, like you kind of mentioned? But I think one of the FAQs that you get is about tiny homes as well. Do you want to answer some of the FAQs that you get?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you asking me that. So one question we get is, are RV parks a trend? And we touched on this before that what is a trend? I one example I love is the carpet industry. I know it sounds way off base, but if you don't know history, people didn't have carpets. This was a mid 1900s thing. The only people who had carpets and rugs were wealthy people because they could afford these expensive rugs and afford to take care of them and afford to clean them. And then all of a sudden, manufacturing allowed us to manufacture rugs for the common man. And all of a sudden, everybody had to have wall to wall carpeting, including in bathrooms and places where you don't want carpeting, right?
Sure.
Well, now look around and people don't want carpeting. They want their wood floors. And we've kind of done this cycle. But there was a trend there where for like 60 years, and even nowadays, you go into new homes and they've got a lot of carpeting in them. But for about 60 years there, everybody had to have carpeting. So was that a trend? Or was the trend the wood floors? Or was the trend, because it's kind of back to solid surface. So it's really important to understand what's a trend. You could argue everything's a trend. It's just how long does a trend last is the way I think about it. Are RVs a trend? Sure. Were houses a trend? Big houses? Sure. Neighborhoods a trend? Were farms a trend when everyone had to have a farm? So tiny homes are great. Not only all tiny homes are created equal, but the definition of a tiny home is it's got to be under 399 square feet. It actually allows it to count as an RV, and that's what we put out at our site. So just a little knowledge for everyone. That's what a tiny home is. Um, I I would say the trend was what happened again. The depression era mentality of we got to get a big house. I think that was the trend. I think this movement to smaller, more affordable homes and then being able to experience the world or do things with the money we have rather than spending it on the house where we shut our eyes for 1/3 of the day. I think that was the trend. Um, I'm not saying it won't change, but just what we've seen with technology allowing people to work from anywhere, I would say that's kind of getting back to where people want to be. So whether it's a trend or not, it's going to be here for a while. So I'm not really worried about that. Um,
I think that's kind of a sort of fun follow through conversation because you were looking at the X amount of decades for history there. You covered a couple, from manufacturing to other, social economic changes to the type of housing we have and, the different world events that took a play. But speaking on world events, this is, a podcast for, technologists, tech professionals. Part of that is, the pandemic, et cetera, amplified being able to work, live, do, with mobility in mind. And as that continues to be even more, disconnected or connected, either way you want to call it, to a single location, I think that does make a lot of sense, right? The risk manager in you, what are some of the signals that you're looking at for trends from the forward looking perspective?
yeah. So I'll give you an example of so RVs again low risk because you can pretty much put them anywhere. But then there's what's the next step beyond that? If people are moving into smaller and but want the mobility that goes with it, I'll give you an example of a group I just spoke with that they're developing. I think most people probably know what pods are for moving. Everybody used to use moving trucks, and then all of a sudden pods came out where they drop something in your driveway, you fill it, and
Hmm.
they stack them and move them wherever you need them.
Hmm.
And they're all because they're all the same size. You can stack them, you can ship them, you can store them different in the same kind of places. There are people doing that with housing now. The start of it was with shipping containers. They're all
Oh.
exactly the same size.
Hmm.
And let's say you live in one in Texas, but you want to live in one in California. Okay. You could either pick yours up and move it there, and there's already a base for it to plug it. You literally just drop it in and it plugs in, just like our outlets are all the same size.
Wow.
Um, and again, it's still a tiny home. It's still mobility. It's still in that RV genre. Um, but there are trailers for them. You could literally treat it like a regular RV, but it's in the same genre, and it's kind of exciting to see how we're getting away from what was traditional in this country for so many years, building bigger houses and bigger neighborhoods, and seeing that people want something different now, and that it's because of technology. So I guess I need to say thank you to everybody on this podcast, all the technology people. Thanks for making this possible, for letting us do what we want to do.
Yeah, yeah. You know, just like you said, I had a couple light bulbs go off for me too, just listening about that because, I've heard of things like sustainability technology for a while and seeing how that's getting played in as well. I'd have to really think about that, but this is like the start of another really big wave of how it will continue to evolve as you have, these mobile home spaces, right, that can be moved around. So uh, this is actually a really exciting place to be, with the forward momentum and growth. I'll
Yeah,
have
and
to give.
part of it for us is you asked, moving from there are people who become experts on single family houses, and that's fantastic. You should be an expert in whatever area you're in.
Yeah.
Be an expert at it and be passionate about it. Um, there are people the same for multifamily. What I'm deep diving into now is that RV and modular space because I think the future's there. I think all the projections show the future's there, and then it's exciting, and I'm kind of passionate about it. My wife, you mentioned sustainability.
Mm.
One we're building north of here is going to be around a farm, a sustainable farm. We basically want, if the world goes crazy around us,
Yeah.
they'll be fine in this one little location in their modular units.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is super cool. I could riff on this with you all day long, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So, thinking about the next step here, obviously people are here to learn about the different asset classes, etc. I'm passionate about how tech can also be involved, which is why I took pause and had a light bulb moment here. But also, it's about return on energy, return on effort, return on investment, right? And so, talk to me a little bit about who's the right, you know, investor that you would want to come and invest with your deals. Who's, how should they be thinking about where RVs fit into their portfolio?
Yeah. So there's, it's funny, we've generally seen two different types of investors. We've got a group that, let's say on one end of the spectrum, you've got hard money lenders that take their money, their retirement money, and lend it out for investments, and they charge points, they charge a high rate, and there's a lot of risk inherent in it.
Hmm.
Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who I guess would stick their money in a money market account and probably be losing versus what's happening with the dollar. Um, so RV parks are neither. They're kind of different. There's an annualized return. There are one nice thing about an RV park, it generates revenue on day one because it's so low on the capital side versus the revenue it brings in. It generates revenue on the day it opens, so that's kind of nice. It brings in cash every month, but not huge amounts. It's more mailbox money. Um, the real value is you're building a business. And because you're building a business and you have those revenue streams coming in, that's where I mentioned earlier, you see that we put in six, but it's going to be worth close to 12 in about 5 years.
Hmm.
When we annualize that, even adding in all the delays and construction delays because of COVID and everything that happened there, we're still looking at an annualized return of over 20% for our investors.
Very cool.
So the right investor is not someone that they need money coming in right now. That's more someone who should be loaning their money out, doing it carefully, and seeing higher returns with a little more risk. It's more for someone that wants to learn it, but is kind of in a passive space and is okay with just a little bit of money coming in now, knowing that in 5, 6 years, it'll be worth a lot more. And I encourage people to read and look up. There's two large companies, Equity and Sun Properties. They're just buying up RV parks. We got calls to buy our RV park before it was opened,
Wow.
and they're just buying them because they realize what the value is going to be over time. So we're looking forward to 4 or 5 years from now, as we start getting some significant offers, as the value goes up, sitting down as a group of investors, everybody that invested in the first park, and saying, all right, let's celebrate, let's drink some wine, and let's figure out what we want to do. Do we want to sell it? Do we want to hold on to it? Do we want to refi? Do we want to sell off part of it?
Right.
Recognize our returns, but hold on to a piece, knowing that it's a cash cow. There's some good opportunities that go with that. But to answer your question, in short, it's not someone that's looking for the quick hit return right now. It's someone that's looking for nice steady over the next few years, but then the payoff at the end, it's hard to beat. It's really hard to beat.
Yeah, I think that speaks to your sort of overall investment and what I'm sort of picking up here, mental thesis, which is have the flexibility and transform as the environment does. And so you have multiple exit strategies.
Yeah, and look, the properties that the three that we've got right now, we buy them just a little bit outside of town, not in the busiest area, generally in place where the highest and best use is not even yet multifamily or mixed use. There's limited what you can do on this land right now. That doesn't mean that in 5 years the highest and best use won't be something different. And here's the cool thing: because you've just built a glorified parking lot, you could literally pick it up, buy a piece of land further out, put the business, the RV park business, down there, and now you've got this piece of land that's worth a heck of a lot more than when you started. And then that's again another fun discussion. Do you sell it? Do you build on it? Do you lease it out to someone else, let them do it, and just write you a check every month? And all the investors that have invested with us, because we bought in a smart way, they own that land too, so they get to be part of that decision. So
Man, that is
it's
fascinating because they get to exit in two potential ways into that new one or stay in the, yeah.
Big
Wow.
difference between that and multifamily.
Wow, that's super cool. I
Thanks.
actually hadn't. Yeah, that's really cool. I guess just to summarize for listening, what you were just talking about, which is a huge aha. You get to keep the land, where potentially the path to progress goes out to the suburban rural area, and as things continue to build, you can take what you those parking lots, move those parking lots to somewhere else that might be 5, 10, 15 miles, continue on the outskirts. Um, outskirts and air quotes, and then repurpose, rezone whatever to potential multifamily, whatever it is, just transform it to whatever the need is for the original location was. Super interesting. And then from the investing side, you're talking the mailbox money, the steady income. What is the development timeline on the glorified parking lot?
Yeah, that's funny. I got to start calling it the glorified parking lot, but it is. It's what it is. So from the time you put a shovel in the dirt,
Mm-hmm.
it's 9 to 12 months.
Wow. Okay.
It's a very short timeline. And when you look at why banks will lend to you, the biggest risk to banks is time. They don't know what's going to happen during that time period, to rates, to
Yep.
materials. When you tell them, no, we'll be operational 9 to 12 months, that's music to the ears of a banker.
That's music to the ears of the investors starting at day
True.
$1, but
Yeah.
all things are aligned. Um, all right, I wanna do a couple rapid fire here things because I want to make best use of your time here, and I
Okay.
appreciate you being here. So, piece of advice that you've heard in the past that has impacted you that you would tell others.
So I'll try and do this quickly. For anybody that's not old enough, doesn't remember who Ted Turner is or was, um, he's a little weird, but he's a very wealthy man, owns most of Montana now, and had an opportunity to see what he did in Atlanta. He owned a very high end shopping mall with a parking lot, a parking deck attached to it, and it was right in the financial district in Atlanta. And one year it was announced that he was basically giving the mall to the city of Atlanta. Everybody's like, what the heck is this guy doing?
Mm,
And then when we dug into it, we realized in the contract, he was giving them the mall and he had had losses that year and he was offsetting stuff. But he was holding on to the parking deck.
yeah,
And the parking deck he owned for 30 years, tax free. I'm sorry, he had to pay $1 a year for it. That was in the contract. He owned a parking lot. And it's funny that hearing that story while I was in business school
mm,
stuck with me to now. We talk about it being a glorified parking lot. I'm like, I'm just like Ted Turner. I own a parking lot. So it's parking decks, parking lots. They're pretty lucrative. So it's not always about owning the quote sexiest thing in the world. I
yeah,
think most people would think a high end shopping mall is a lot sexier than a smelling parking deck with fumes in it.
sure.
Um, but a smart man.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. It's I mean, we don't really want money. We want the outcomes that money give us, right?
That's right.
And so, cool. What keeps you going today? You've got this successful career. You're talking about your CWO, CTO. Talk to me about what keeps you passionate and waking up.
Well, you probably can't tell my age by the fact that my beard, I don't look trendy and cool like you. I just look old. It comes in not even gray, it's white. I think you reach a point in your life. One, you just want more out of life, and more can look like a bunch of different things. It could be, I want to do more. I want to do more with my family. With us, it's our kids. We just want more for them. We're not spoiling them, but we want them to see the world. We want them to experience things. That's what keeps me going. One of our children is considered special needs. I don't consider him that, but he's on the autism spectrum, and he's probably smarter than both of us put together. Um, but when we realized we needed him to go to a different special school that was going to cost the equivalent of a college education, the nice thing is when you're in the investing realm, you can do that. You can, as an entrepreneur, you can say, okay, I'm just going to change gears, do something different, generate some more capital so I can do this. Those are the kind of things that keep me going. And um, it's a lot of giving back. My wife wants to create a school to teach business to kids because we don't necessarily do a good job of that in our schools, and the schools don't necessarily want you to come in and do it. So she wants to create her own school. Well, that will take some funding. So that's what we're doing. I want a school that's better for kids on the autism spectrum because it's hard, it's difficult. And to do those things, we need to be successful. So,
We'll talk offline if there's other things I can do to help, donations or stuff like that, give you a platform in the future. I believe in that too on both of those. Uh, Outstanding the impact. And then you're talking about that from the last one here is, what would you tell? What are things that you wish you knew about investing that you would tell the 30-year-old who's looking to, you know, follow some of the path that you're talking about here, wanting to get some of the freedom, but also impact.
yeah. So, as long as your values and your ethics, and you and I had chatted about this, what type of people do I like to work with? I
Yep.
want people with one, ethics need to be beyond reproach. There's bad people in everything. There's bad people in business and schools and churches. There's bad people everywhere. But there's also a lot of good people. Well, real estate does that as well. And what we found is that the good people tend to congregate and be together. So what I would say is make sure your net worth is your network. I don't know if you've heard that phrase.
Hmm.
Um, that goes with values as well. You want to hang out with the right people. My wife and I we use the phrase the abundance mindset. When we do our meetups, we share everything. We don't charge for it. We just invite people out. It was killing me that people were losing money investing in real estate in Austin, Texas. It was just killing me. So we just share. And when you do that, you find other good people. And as long as you're around good people, and that goes for if you're investing, you're going to need good banks, you're going to need good developers, you're going to need good construction, you're going to need find who those good people are, do your due diligence, make sure they really are good people. That's who you want to learn from. That's who you want to do business with and grow it from there.
Thanks for being here, Andrew. I appreciate you
Oh,
sharing
no. Thank you
everything.
for having me.
Yeah. And you know, I'd love to send some people your way to invest with you as well. Where can people find you to learn more about this and just connect?
Yeah. So again, my chief technology officer, also my chief marketing officer, is not with me today. Best way to connect with me is just drop me an email. Is really the best way. It's Andrew at Homes for the Win,
Hmm.
HOMESFORTHEWIN, Andrew at homesforthewin.com. I love sharing information. I do have a teaching degree, so sometimes I get a little teachy or a little preachy, but I do love sharing. And again, if there's anything I can do for you or your audience as far as helping them understand what the opportunities are, whether it's with us or someone else, happy to do that. Love doing that.
Outstanding. I'll make sure to put this in the show notes, and we'll make sure it's marketed to the right places for people to get to know you. So appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.